Hey guys, Drifter here. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different on the channel. We're going to be reviewing Batman vs. Superman. I can't show you any clips from the movie because I'll get copyright strikes, so in the background we have some good old Black Ops 3 gameplay. Even though this is mostly a gaming channel, I do feel that a movie review is appropriate, namely because many of you have asked my opinion on it. I'm a big fan of comic books. I read a ton. You can see my comics behind me when I stream, and I've actually done a couple of full comic book reviews on this channel, so it does feel appropriate. The gameplay you're seeing right now is me using my Batman classes, 2 games of TDM, which I don't often post. One with me using the MX Garand and Marshall 16 and Ripper. I do exceptionally well, especially in the middle of this game. And then in the next game, I'm going to be using a Dark Matter crossbow and doing very, very well with that one. Before we get started, I want to let you know that this review will contain spoilers. There will be big, fat, serious, plot-destroying, movie-revealing spoilers here because I need to. The movie is big, it's controversial, and one of the biggest controversies is that it deviates from the source material, so in order to do this appropriately, there will be spoilers. Please, 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 if you don't want to hear spoilers, instead of getting mad at me, just exit the video and watch it later. So right now, the movie is getting slammed by critics and fans alike, and I think it's unfairly so. It's an overall good movie, but I will admit it has serious pacing issues, and it deviated from the source material. I think the pacing issues is driving the critics crazy, and the source material is driving the fans crazy. You're going to talk a lot about the source material, and that's where the spoilers come in. So I'm going to do a lot of the bad stuff first, but let's do one good thing first. Ben Affleck is the best Batman that I have ever seen. Ben Affleck is Batman. Ben Affleck became Batman. He nailed that role. As much as I like the Christian Bale Batman, Ben Affleck was amazing in ways that I didn't think that he could be amazing. Like, in 10 years' time, they're going to be redrawing Batman to look like Ben Affleck in the same way that they're currently redrawing Iron Man to look like Robert Downey Jr. That's how good it was. But now let's jump into the bad stuff. The movie had crazy bad pacing issues because for almost the first hour and a half of this 2.5 hour long movie, so for a time period that is the same time period as most normal movies, period, it was doing this weird foil/juxtaposition thing to show the contrast between Batman and Superman and their lives and their struggles and their problems and how they were seeing each issue differently from one another, and they were kind of coming together. But this lasted for a very, very long time with some random interjections from congressmen and soldiers and Wonder Woman and Lex Luthor, and it was really, really all over the place. Again, the idea was to show, bright happen in Metropolis, and then dark, scary Gotham, and then, an event happens. Superman has his take on it, Batman has his take on it, and they're very separate from each other. They're very much so removed. And then you have, Batman's personal struggles compared to Clark Kent or Superman's personal struggles. And the idea was to just show how different they were. But when you sandwich them back to back to back over and over and over again, instead of being one foil or one comparison, it was like this crazy, it's like walking into a room and flipping the lights on and off every 5 minutes is how it felt. It was really, really disjointed. Despite how fast-paced the movie was, it felt like it was going nowhere fast, and I had almost no idea what was going on. I was just sitting there waiting for this to get good while we talk about Superman's personal problems and stuff like that. There were also numerous confusing dream sequences, mostly with Batman. He was having a lot of nightmares, which were not exactly, some were memories, some were not, some were realizations, some were fears, and there was no clear indication when Batman was dreaming or not, so at different points we thought the movie just took crazy left turns and it made no sense. There were ghosts that would show up and talk to Superman, like his father. Didn't really explain that one either. That one was confusing for me. And maybe even a time travel event, which came in out of nowhere, and I thought, honest to God, it was a dream at first, but more on that one later. So we had all of this sort of non-linear stuff smashed into a movie that's already bouncing all over the place, and it was truly difficult to follow. Now, the pacing, once the characters finally all came together near about the last hour of the movie, all of these problems were solved and the movie was way more on point, but before then it was just kind of a big mess, to be honest. Now we're going to be talking about where it deviates from source material. Almost all of you are familiar with Batman and Superman. Neither one of these guys are big on killing. Typically Batman has an absolute hardcore set-in-stone no-killing rule, at least he has for about the last 10 or 15 years or so, whereas Superman is also very moral, kind of a Boy Scout, but he does end up killing Zod, Brainiac, and a few of his enemies. Well, all those rules just went completely out the window. Just Just go ahead and forget all about that because Batman uses guns and Batman kills people. To be fair, most of the time Batman's guns are stolen from enemies, like he'll just grab somebody's handgun and shoot them in the face with it, or throw the gun in somebody, or steal one gun and use it to like, I think he like grabbed an Uzi and sprayed 3 other bad guys that were coming up behind him, something like that. He has a kryptonite grenade launcher that he uses to fight Superman, which people are like, Batman wouldn't do that. He would throw batarangs at them. Oh, come on, don't be ridiculous. You know, you have to have something to launch your kryptonite at Batman, so that makes sense. And, you know, there is the dream sequence, which may be a future sequence in which he uses an AK-47, which was very, very confusing again. And the no-killing Batman is gone. I noticed this almost immediately. Batman is just murking people all movie long. I think the point is that the whole world is at stake, that there is literally a Superman now, that there is a god, that there's a demon that he has to fight, and that the fate of the entire planet, if not the entire universe, is on the line here, and he does not have time to go through this no-killing nonsense. But Batman's shooting people. He stabbed a dude in the face with a batarang, ran him over with cars, blew him up using light machine guns, grenades. Batman was slaying people all movie long. A lot of hardcore Batman fans not going to be a big fan of that one. And I think, again, the idea was to show that Batman's going over the edge, that he's getting amped, he's getting worked up, that they're kind of twisting that Bruce Wayne into something more and more evil. On the flip side of things, now I thought that was kind of interesting. A lot of people hated that, and I guess rightfully so, but I thought it was an interesting change on things and a different take. Superman's story tried to go in a very different direction. I liken it to Vash the Stampede, if you've ever seen Trigun, or maybe some of the early Spider-Man movies. You have a hero that's so powerful you can't really fight them and you can't really hurt them, except emotionally, and emotionally you have this godlike, all this religious symbolism stuff going on to where he likes everybody. He wants to save everyone, but he can't save everyone. And it's just like Trigun with Vash the Stampede. There's all these scenarios where he can't save everyone and he has to choose and this sort of stuff. And you would think that this would work. You would think that this would humanize Superman and make him dramatic and interesting to show how hard he struggles and how often he fails to save the people that he cares about. But for the life of me, it just doesn't work, and I just don't care. Now, that's a shame because Henry Cavill's a very good actor. He does a good Superman. Maybe I'm biased, maybe I'm picky or whatever. I just don't care about Superman and his fake problems or whatever. It was just like depressing. If anything, it didn't make me feel for Superman. It just made me feel depressed in general, and I kind of didn't like it. Finally, Superman was killing some people too, especially when they would mess with Lois Lane. They would get pretty wrecked. And what was really strange is that he seemed happy about it. Like some guy kidnapped Lois Lane and he just smiled before he blasted this guy through like 3 walls and crushed him into little bits or whatever. That was very, very different as well. But it's kind of leading into this future sequence, which I'll talk about in just a minute, where we have some Injustice Gods Among Us, where Superman turns evil, and Batman's trying to fight him, and the Flash comes back to warn him, and some crazy stuff like that. Next up on the character list, Lex Luthor comes off as moody and weird, not exactly calculating and smart. A lot of people are saying that he's like the Joker, like an autistic Joker, which is a little bit insulting, but I don't think that's quite fair. I think they kind of wanted to make him a grumpy genius because Lex Luthor has always had a short temper. He's always been very calculating and reserved, but to be fair, his temper was incredibly short, and they got that right in the movie, but his behaviors are just so Jokerish, and he wears such weird clothes and stuff. It just really didn't feel like Lex Luthor to me. It felt all kinds of wrong, and I wouldn't say that he was super smart. He's done some super smart stuff, but I don't think that creating Doomsday to kill Superman and then rampage all over the planet was by any means brilliant. That was actually an incredibly stupid thing to do. Moving into the next bit, there's lots of stuff happening that the audience is supposed to be shocked by, or, oh, it's a big plot twist, But it has no build-up at all. Even if you watch the movie really closely like I did, there's no kind of reveal to it. It just kind of comes out of nowhere. For example, the main crux of the movie is that Lex Luthor kind of knows both of their secret identities and kind of manipulates this fight and pushes them toward one another. But there's really almost no reveal or hint there. There's literally maybe one hint in the entire movie, and it's a very, very tiny one. So it just kind of comes out of nowhere. It's like, Lex Luthor knows I'm Bruce Wayne? What's going on? Lex Luthor knows I'm Clark Kent, but how? And he just doesn't explain how. Lex is a genius. He's got this figured out. Lex is working on a secret plan that's actually a twist after the fight. Was there a clue? No, not really. It just kind of happened. So much of this stuff is just kind of happening, and it's supposed to be twisty and curvy and stuff, but there's no build-up and clues, which is very weird and off-putting. Moving on, there was some references to other DC stuff kind of smushed in there. Some people thought was cute, other people's didn't like. There was a future sequence, or it could be a dream sequence, however you want to look at it, where it like jumps like 20 years in the future with this old Batman in the desert shooting people with an AK-47, and Darkseid has invaded the planet, but Superman has turned evil because Lois Lane died, and like Superman is just melting people with his laser vision, and there are these apocalypse soldiers and stuff, and that's kind of squeezed in, like really, I think that's kind of building up for Justice League and for other movies to do Injustice, Gods Among Us, which is cool, and it's a great video game, and I think it's interesting, but it just kind of comes out of nowhere for this movie. Again, it's only in there to kind of give some sort of build up to movies that I'm sure will come out like 5 years from now. And a lot of people hated the Batman emails. So Batman manages to hack Lex Luthor stuff, and he gets these emails on metahumans, the Flash, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Cyborg, all this kind of stuff. And Lex has all these files. He's been collecting data about them, trying to learn their identities and powers and stuff so that he can steal them. And a lot of people said that it was like a shameless advertising, like, her Flash movie coming, her look at the Wonder Woman and stuff like that. And I think that it was a little bit shoehorned in, maybe a little squeezed in. It wasn't that bad, but I think it was kind of practical, because in real life, it's not like Batman's going to be there to see all of these people, right? It's not like he's going to find papers or a flash drive. He's going to dig into a cloud server like anybody, almost any business would, and he's going to find it via hacking, and he just like emails these files to Wonder Woman. So was it weird? Yes. Was having a giant computer screen up there for like 2 minutes weird, and watching Batman click around on his MacBook and open Windows weird? Yes, but it was practical. I mean, if you want to be realistic about it, that's kind of how it's going to happen. So that was most of my negatives about the movie. Let's talk about the good stuff. I feel I've taken like a big crap on Batman versus Superman here. Good stuff. Ben Affleck is the best Batman ever. We talked about that earlier on. He nailed that Batman. He's pretty much doing the Frank Miller, like old grumpy Batman, but he's also doing a little bit of the Injustice Batman as well. Very, very good Batman. Christian Bale's good, but Ben's got you beat, man. I'm sorry to hear that. Cavill and Gal Gadot, very on point too. That's Superman and Wonder Woman. Superman pretty much is Superman. He's very good. And Wonder Woman, I was impressed by. Wonder Woman nailed that part very, very effectively as well. I think everybody's going to be happy with how Wonder Woman panned out and how well she fights, because my God, she threw down really, really hard. Overall, the movie was wonderfully filmed, amazing music, very good for special effects, God-tier fight scenes, especially for a superhero movie where they tend to be very short. They were far from short in this one. And I honestly think that most of the source material deviations are fine and fitting, basically because doing the same thing forever and ever again just gets boring. It just puts me to sleep. Like, I like seeing my comic books come to life. I'm a comic book fan, so that's neat. Kind of like watching The Watchmen, even though that changed a little bit too. But watching the exact same story pan out in the same way, exactly how it does in the comic books, where I know exactly how it's going to happen, and all the characters are exactly the same, is super duper boring. So going off script a little bit, making Batman angrier and using guns and having a potentially bad Superman and, you know, a different Lex Luthor, this is kind of fine because at least they're trying something different, right? The Batman versus Superman fight is very good. It lasts like 30 minutes, and it's very, very heavily inspired by Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, where he fights Superman in Crime Alley, if I'm not mistaken. Almost shot for shot in a lot of ways. Very, very good right there. And matter of fact, the whole thing is just dripping with this kind of Frank Miller influence of having everything be in religious terms. Because if you've ever read The Dark Knight Returns, the entire book is narrated like a legend or like a lore, and they talk about gods among us and the ancient men and fear this and bow to this and I won't bow, and you know, all this kind of stuff. But the whole movie's got that religious feel to it, which is very cool for a superhero movie, because when people have these kind of powers, we definitely would be treating them like gods. So I think that's a good thing too. And the Doomsday fight at the very end of the movie, which is probably like 45 minutes, is legit. Doomsday absolutely got his credit. He looks like Doomsday, he hits like Doomsday, he fights like Doomsday, and he ruins people's business just like Doomsday. Awesome. Ass kicking everywhere. Very good use of all the characters. I do think it was kind of funny. Batman pretty much got wrecked by Doomsday, as well he should be. And the whole final sequence was amazing. I feel that it sets up the Justice League very well, which I think the Justice League starts filming in a month or something, so that's going to be very good. And I think overall the movie is going to blow your mind. When you're done with it, you're going to come out of the movie and sit there thinking like, oh, what did I just see? And I think most of you are going to need like a little bit, like an hour, 30, 35 minutes to kind of put it all together and make sense of it. Yes, the movie has problems. Some of the problems, again, are from the deviation from the source material, I'm fine with that. But from a technical standpoint, the pacing is a shit show for the first hour and a half. It's a huge mess. Like, they tried something creative and they failed pretty bad. But overall, I think it's a good movie, definitely entertaining, and gonna be worth your $10 to see. Guys, that is all for my Batman vs. Superman review. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.